All right, testing, testing. Okay. Um, for those of you who don't know me, which is probably going to be over 99% of people watching this video, my name is Lee W. And today I'm going to be doing a video for YouTube demonstrating and explaining some of the disagreements that I have with some of the Wing Chun practitioners on YouTube. Now, I posted a video before, but if you've seen the video, then after 7 minutes, the video cuts out. I mean, you can hear what I'm saying in that video, but then you can no longer see me in that video after 7 minutes because I guess I was recording that video with YouTube and bad Wi-Fi connection, it messed up the video, so I apologize for that. But either way, that video was just me talking through the disagreement, the argument that I was having on YouTube about Wing Chun Kung Fu, and the argument that I was having with the practitioner, or the other martial artist, and that's how that video came about, was to explain that. This video is actually to demonstrate or show why I felt the way I felt, or actually demonstrate what I was talking about. So I'll re-illustrate some of those points and explain what I was talking about as well as demonstrate it. Okay, so you're going to have to excuse the garage, excuse the mess a little bit, but this is the best space that I have to demonstrate what I was talking about. Now, one of the points that I hit on in the previous video is I talked about the popular stance that seems to be popular with YouTube Wing Chun practitioners. And one of the things that I noted in the last video is that when I first started practicing Wing Chun, and I asked my Sifu, I asked my master, I asked my teacher, I asked him, I said, what is the proper stance for a Wing Chun practitioner? And the one thing that he told me is that he said, you don't always have to have a definite stance. He's like, there really is no real definite stance for Wing Chun. One of the things that I was taught about Wing Chun, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand about Wing Chun Kung Fu is that Wing Chun Kung Fu is more based on strategy than it is solid physical concepts. I mean, of course, Wing Chun has its preference for physically how you articulate things. That's what makes it separate from any other martial art. Every martial art has their physical preferences for how you articulate the technique, or the ideal or the concept that you're trying to get across or you're trying to express. Wing Chun, it does have its, it has that physical limitation, but really Wing Chun is more of a strategy. The ideal behind Wing Chun is the shortest distance between you and your opponent, and the most practical move to make. So Wing Chun is based off of the ideal or the strategy of cutting down on everything that's not necessary and getting straight to the point. Wing Chun at one time was also referred to as the intercepting fist. And you have some Wing Chun practitioners who they still refer to it as the intercepting fist, but it seems like more and more Wing Chun is becoming kind of like the more popularized it becomes, and the more people change and they add things, there's less emphasis put on the intercepting fist, and that's one thing that I'll talk about and I'll try to hit on in this video. And so again, I want to ask you to excuse the mess in the garage. I'm going to try to speak up. Hopefully everything that I'm saying can be heard in the video, and I'm going to try to bring the laptop up a little bit and bring. Okay, so one of the things that I had an issue with in the video, and the thing that I was arguing with the guy about, was there seems to be this ideal in Wing Chun. Earlier I mentioned the stance, and there seems to be this ideal in Wing Chun, or at least what I'm seeing in YouTube, is that guys seem to think, for whatever reason, they seem to think that they have to extend their arm, their forward arm out, and have to extend these fingers. And actually, I just had a friend, he's very deep in Kung Fu. Shout out to Tom, you know, hey Tom Poisey, shout out to Tom. And one of the things me and Tom were debating, or what we were talking about, is he was saying that in Wing Chun, not everybody has extended fingers. Well, really, in general, in a fight or in general martial arts, everybody's not supposed. No, nobody's supposed to have extended fingers anyway. Like, what's the point? It's not practical, and really, it's not good for any martial artist, or it's really not good for any martial situation, whether it be a street fight or a sport event. So a lot of times, what I see Wing Chun guys doing in this video is that in Wing Chun we have the concept of the center line. And for those who don't know what the center line is, if you had an imaginary line that would separate your body into two equal asymmetrical halves, that line would go down the center. In Wing Chun, that's called the center line. And the reason that that line is important is because along that line, you have your eyes, your nose, your chin, your throat, your sternum, your lower stomach, and your genitals. These are all very key weak points on the body that are, targeted in Kung Fu fighting. And so what a lot of Wing Chun practitioners think they have to do, and what I have an issue with, is when they're in their stance, what a lot of them tend to do is they have this hand on the center line. But what a lot of them tend to do is they kind of like extend these fingers out and forward. And then what they do is they take the adjacent hand and they kind of align it, right here on the elbow. And what they're really trying to do is, by fluctuating these fingers or giving them a little bit of stiffness and straighten them out, if you can see in the video, you'll notice that certain muscles move in my arm. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a little bit of tension in that forward arm, and they're trying to activate some of these muscles. But the problem that I have with this, and what I was taught in Wing Chun, is in Kung Fu in general, there's a lot of eye gouging, there's a lot of throat grabbing, there's a lot of hand grabbing, there's a lot of finger grabbing. And so if you got these fingers kind of extended like this, and you have this arm extended out, and like I said, what they do is they get in this stance right here. There's a good possibility, there's a good chance. One thing I'm always worried about as a martial artist, as a fighter, is these fingers can get caught in clothing. They can get jammed. Your opponent could rush in, and as he's rushing in, he could catch these fingers. These fingers could get caught on his clothing. And so that was one thing my Sifu he hit me on. And like I said, also Kung Fu people, they like to grab those fingers. When they see those fingers out, that's one thing I like to do. As a martial artist, when I see these fingers just extended for no reason, and I've seen, martial artists and people do that to me before, one thing I like to do is just reach out and grab the hand or grab the fingers and use it to my advantage. And like I said, even if a person's not thinking about grabbing those hands or grabbing those fingers, if they rush you, there's a good chance that their body weight or their clothing could catch a finger, and you could break a finger or jam a finger, and the fight is pretty much over for that. Over from that point. And what you got to realize as a Wing Chun practitioner, that, this is your leading hand. This is the hand that you're leading off with. This is your leading attacking hand. That's why it's forward. So you never want to have that hand, compromised by just having those fingers just fully extended. But this is something that I see is very popularized on YouTube. I don't know if it's because of the movies. I noticed in one of the Ip Man movies that Donnie Yen, there's a point where the camera dramatizes him, just having his fingers just extended. The thing that I was taught about that finger extension from my Sifu is that you kind of want to have your fingers kind of like slightly together. And you kind of want to have your fingers slightly together with a little bit of tension, not too much. And you want to have your fingers kind of slightly pointed up. So I'm still on the center line, but I have these fingers kind of slightly pointed up. That way, in the event that, somebody comes in, I don't have these fingers or this hand just forward extended, and I don't have the opportunity to get these fingers or this hand just jammed. So I have these fingers just kind of just slightly up. The second problem I have with that forward arm extension is that in Wing Chun, you know, the power behind your punch not only comes from how your elbow and your joints are aligned with your body, but it also comes from being able to generate the punch from the elbow. You know, a lot of punches that are pushed in Wing Chun, a lot of attacks they're pushed from the elbow. And what I see a lot of these guys doing on YouTube is if you got this arm fully extended, the elbow is almost locked out. So not only do you have your fingers compromised, you got this elbow almost locked out. So you can't really attack off that forward arm efficiently. You're not going to be able to generate the power that you want to be able to generate because the elbow's pretty much is already extended. It's already done what is meant to do. And so that's another issue that I have with that stance. And so this is what I see a lot of guys doing. You know, yeah, the hand is on the center line, but they got these fingers extended forward. And what ends up happening is that they can't use this forward arm for what it's intended to. I mean, it looks like this forward arm is just sitting out there, but actually, this is the closest thing to my opponent right now. This may be my power hand, but my power hand is back here. The closest hand to my opponent is right here. I can't even use it to get a decent attack in if my arm is fully extended and then my fingers are fully extended. And so even in the case of what my friend Tom brought up, he said, well, some guys have a fist going forward instead of fingers. Same thing. If the arm is too far forward extended, I can't generate anything off of that. So the way I was taught, if I was going to stand like that, the way I was taught by my Sifu is that I have to have some bend in this arm. And what's important, more so than having it extended forward, like you see these guys doing on YouTube, is what's more so important is that I have this arm, I have these joints aligned, this elbow, this joint, and I have this hand aligned with my center line. It's protecting my center line, and I have some bend in this arm. That way, when this arm is closest to my opponent, and in the event that I want to intercept my opponent, I at least have enough bend in my arm to snap off my first punch. You know, I got enough bend in my arm, snap off my first punch. But I can't do that if the arm is already too extended. Because then I'm doing this thing right here. You know, and that's what you see a lot of guys doing in Wing Chun on YouTube when they're fighting in the videos. As soon as the other guy rushes them, they're kind of like trying to fend off with this forward arm, and they can't actually just attack off that forward arm because they don't have that bend in the elbow that allows them to push off that first punch. They don't have that bend there. Their arm's too extended. All right, so that's enough for killing that dead horse. All right, the next thing the other issue that I have with the video is the guy's stance. Not only was his elbow just straight extended, but his legs were straight up. And it doesn't matter what sport you play. Everybody knows, you know, it doesn't matter if it's basketball, football, baseball, anything. Everybody knows you got to have a little bit of bend in your legs. You can't just be standing straight up, especially not in a fight. And what I've noticed with a lot of these Wing Chun guys is that what they're doing is they got this arm fully extended straight forward. They got these fingers fully extended straight forward. And they're standing straight up. Their knees are locked. And what they're doing is as the guy is coming in, because this arm is fully extended and they don't have an opportunity to get any bend in that arm or protect or do what they got to do, what they end up doing is they kind of come up, raise up on their toes. And then they kind of lean their head back. And then they kind of come forward, and then they start trying to attack from there. And the thing about that is not only are you leaning back and exposing your chin, but you're leaning back with your spine. And you're allowing your spine, which when you lean back with your spine, you're doing this, now your balance and your weight is going that way. And so your force is going that way. So you're trying to like counterattack and throw a punch and counterattack and throw a punch here, but you're leaning back that way. So you're trying to go forward and backwards at the same time. And it doesn't work. You know, in Kung Fu and martial arts, your mind, your body, your soul got to be one. They have to be one thing. So your mind, what you think you're doing, your soul or your intentions And what your body is actually doing, it's got to all be one thing. You know, if you're counter attacking and you're going forward, you got to be going forward. You can't be with your knees locked and your arm just fully extended and your fingers just fully extended and be doing this thing right here and trying to attack at the same time. I saw that guy doing a lot of that in the video. But what made the fight work for the guy is that he was aggressive. You know, he kept coming. There was even times when he was coming like this, but because he was coming like that and he was coming so aggressively, the other guy didn't have time to react because what he was just doing was a lot of slapping and a lot of hitting, and he was able to dominate, or at least have the appearance of dominating the fight by continuously doing that. You know, even though it was just a sparring match, it wasn't a serious fight. It was a match between two schools. If I didn't mention that earlier in this video, the video that I'm referring to is a video about a Wing Chun practitioners or Wing Chun school that goes to a karate school. They have this competition. So this is what I'm talking about. All right, so getting back to the stance, you have to have some bend. Everybody knows you got to have some bend in your legs. You know, and then the same thing what a lot of Wing Chun guys neglect is that you have to have some bend in this forward leading arm. You can't have this arm extended like this and just out here and have all of this space exposed for counterattacks from different types of martial arts. You got to have some bend. You got to have some bend. You got to have your arm right, at least right here. You can't have it. You can't be doing this, you know, during the fight. You got to have it at least right here. And that way, with this bend in my arm, it allows me, if you notice, if I have my hands extended fully right here, or if I have my arm extended fully right here, like what you see in what you see a lot of guys doing in the video, you see a lot is exposed. You know, a good boxer, all he has to do is come with a good overhand, a good hook. You know, like I said, all somebody's got to do is they got to jam these fingers, attack these fingers, grab this hand, grab this arm, pull it down, and just come over and attack. It's going to be easy because this arm is fully extended and there's no bend and there's no give to it, so it's going to be easy to manipulate. But if I have that bend in my arm, look at where my hand goes. It goes from being right here and leaving everything exposed to being right here. And not only does it put me in a better position to parry and protect myself, now I have that bend, so when I want that first punch off that leading arm, if I can get that intercepting punch, I have the opportunity to get it. Versus before, you know, I couldn't do it like this, and you definitely can't do it kind of leaning back because you're trying to avoid the attack coming in. You're leaning back, you got this arm stretched out and exposed, and you're trying to do this thing at the same time. It doesn't work. And that's why a lot of Wing Chun guys, you know, they get beat in street fights or they get beat in demos with other schools, because other schools don't stand like that. They don't teach those concepts. And Wing Chun traditionally doesn't stand like that. They don't teach those concepts. So like I said, you gotta have some bend in the arm. And so that was my problem. That was my issue with the video. Okay, so now the other issue was the way the guy was kicking. And in Wing Chun, there's a popular forward kick. There aren't too many high kicks in Wing Chun. Same thing with Xing Yi. You know, there aren't too many high kicks in Xing Yi and certain styles of Kung Fu. Kung Fu is mostly focused on, a lot of styles in Kung Fu are mostly focused on the hands and the upper body. Now, you do have things like Song Da and other different kickboxing forms of Kung Fu where obviously, you know, they use their legs, whatever. But that's not always the case in Wing Chun. And you do have some Wing Chun styles where they have incorporated high kicks into what they're doing. But the problem I had with what the guy was doing in the video in terms of his kicks was not only was he coming in like this, you know, with his center line exposed and with his enemy being able to see his center line, when he was doing his kick, it wasn't like a Wing Chun kick. The way I was taught to do the Wing Chun kick is that you get close to the wall and you kind of bring your leg up, and you put your foot on the wall and you push your kick through. So it's more like a push kick versus a lot of times what you see a lot of Wing Chun guys doing is they're doing kind of like a snap kick. And let me adjust the camera so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So a lot of times what I'm seeing in the videos with the Wing Chun guys, and again I'm demonstrating the incorrect stance. A lot of these guys have like this snap kick, like it's coming from the bottom of the ground up. And I mean, I guess that's fine if you're trying to whip your leg up and hit the genitals. But from what I understand is that the traditional Wing Chun kick is supposed to be more like you're pushing through your opponent, not bringing your foot up from the ground and then snapping your knee out. Not bringing your leg up, snapping your knee out. From what I understand, you bring your leg up and you kind of push through your opponent. So your kick is more like a than it is an actual, not a snap, but it's an actual push. That's supposed to be, the proper push kick. So what I noticed in the video with the guy, one of the things that he was doing was he was he was snapping it, and then he gets to a point in the video where he's almost sideways, and he's trying to he's got his leg up and he almost falls over because he's trying to push it, but the only reason he's pushing it at that point is because he's trying to reach his opponent. Now, one of the things that I was taught in Wing Chun when it comes to kicking is two things. One, you always keep your hands up. Even when you're doing the kick, you always keep your hands up because you never know when your opponent might move that kick out the way and then come in with his attack at the same time. You always try to keep your hands up. So it's never like what you see in the videos with the guys. They automatically just drop their hands down here. They kind of like start doing this thing right here. That's how, I was never taught like that. You're supposed to kind of keep your hands up, keep your shoulders relaxed slightly forward, almost like a boxing stance. When you come into that kick, see, I still have my hands up. I don't bring my hands down and like you see a lot of guys doing in them crazy Wing Chun videos. I don't even know why they do that. Even when you do the push kick off the front leg, you still have your hands up and you push in and do your kick off the front leg. Not all this you see in the video. No, none of that's going to work. Even if you kick your opponent, maybe if you kicked your opponent's knee, that's going to work. Now, the idea behind that is, I think what they're doing is they're doing a snap kick, or what they're doing is a stop kick off the front leg. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to stop their opponent from kicking by kicking the opponent's front leg. And they're also trying to stop the opponent from advancing. But there's even a way to do that. And you'll notice Bruce Lee kind of popularized this technique. A lot of times in the movies or Jet Li, you'll see them. What you do is you cross over and you catch the foot. And when you cross over and you catch the leg with your opposite foot, you're actually supposed to catch it with the inside of the bottom of your foot. So you're not doing this like what you see the guys doing in the video. Is when you see the guy kicking with the opposite leg, you catch him and you stop it. See the guy kicking with the opposite leg, you catch him and you stop it. And then if you have to catch the front leg, you still push the front leg. You still push the front leg kick. You don't whip it like you see a lot of those guys doing in the video. And so those were my issues, and that's what I was trying to explain to the guy in the chat, in the forum. And, I guess we disagreed about the way things should be done in Wing Chun or the way things should be done in martial arts, but that's just my perspective. And like I said, I'm not an expert in Wing Chun. I'm not a professional fighter. I'm not a Sifu, but I studied Wing Chun, and those were some of the concepts. Those were some of the ideas that I was taught. And I'm open to commentary. So, if you view this video and you want to give me some commentary, or if you have something, you want to say, then, I'm open to it. Just leave it in the comments. But I'm not going to be arguing with everybody about the way Wing Chun should be done. Like I said, I was always taught there was strategy behind Wing Chun. Wing Chun was more of a strategy than an actual definite way to do things all the time. One last technique that I almost never see utilized in Wing Chun is the double wing block. And a lot of people wonder, because Wing Chun is such close distance, how do you safely close, or how do you effectively close the distance between you and your opponent? One of the things that I was taught by my Sifu was the double wing block, and it was actually the first thing that he did to me. And the idea behind the double wing block is that you reach out, you extend your hands out, keeping them in a position to keep them in front of you and keep them protecting you at the same time. You reach out, you extend your hands out, almost like a crane extends its wings, and you grab the opponent's arms or his wrist, and you collapse him down. And then from that point, once you reach out and you collapse him down, you can kind of bring your elbows in. Make sure you don't have your elbows out. Make sure you're not chicken winging. But you reach in, collapse, bring his hands down out of the way, and then once again, you have that bend in your arm to get that first punch off once you bring his hands down out of the way. And so I almost never see Wing Chun guys on YouTube do this. A lot of times what they do to close the distance between them and their opponent is, like I said, they got this full arm extension. They got this thing going here with the fingers, and then they start. And then off of that front push kick or snap kick, then they try to get the first attack and they try to rush in. Well, what my Sifu always taught is, he said, when you're in your stance, and like I said, the emphasis is not on how you hold your arms or your stance, even though I know it's a lot of people that are going to say, yeah, yes, it is. The emphasis is on making sure you're exploding from the center line that we talked about earlier. And so when you're in your stance, one thing he taught, and one of the reasons why I kind of keep the fingers together and keep the fingers relaxed, is because he taught the double wing block. And what I would do is, if I'm close enough to the opponent, I'm not going to reach forward, and I'm not going to disalign my spine. I'm going to keep my spine straight. I'm going to keep my legs balanced. I'm not going to reach forward and do this thing. I'm not going to reach forward and bend backwards like I see some guys doing on YouTube and do that thing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my body and my base forward all in one movement and extend my arms to do the double wing block. And so when I see the other guy, he's in his boxer stance or his Muay Thai stance, he's got his hands up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out, I'm going to take those hands. It's just that simple. So when I reach out, I take his hands. Once I get his hands, and I cut off his space so that he can't utilize his full extensions for his punch or whatever style he's doing. Hopefully, he won't be doing Wing Chun, or he won't be doing Wing Chun better than you. But once I reach out, I get those hands, double wing block, pull his hands in, pull his hands down, and I close off his space with my body at the same time. I'm on the outside, and at the same time, I'm close on the inside to his center line. So his hands at this point, once I reach out and I get him, his hands at this point are underneath my hands, and my hands are closer to his face. So what do you think I'm going to do from that point, especially once I have this bend in the elbow? So once I reach out, imagine this is the other person. Okay, now you're back to seeing me. So once I reach out, and I catch his hands, and I'm on top, boom, that's where I'm going to hit him next from there. You know what I mean? So his hands are kind of on the inside. Like I said, once I reach out, double wing block, I collapse. His hands are on the inside. Then I'm going to spring out and hit him from there. Ring out, boom, collapse, pop, 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 hit him from there. And so anyways, those are just some of my ideas about Wing Chun. Those are just some of the things that I was taught. Like I said, you may or you may not agree with it. Like I said, everybody's Wing Chun is a little bit different, because Wing Chun is more so of a strategy based off of your center line and your balance and the shortest distance between you and your opponent and intercepting your opponent's attack, more so than it is just a definite, okay, you always have to do it this way, you always got to do it like that. No, that's not how Wing Chun works. But anyways, like I said, I'm open to comments. I'm not going to be arguing with everybody. I don't care about you calling me a dumbass. I don't care about you calling me this. I don't care about you saying I can't do this and I can't do that. Like I said, these were the concepts that I was taught. And, I worked 3 years, maximum security state corrections. I've been in several knife fights. I've been in several one-on-one fights with inmates. I've even been in a couple of prison riots. And, you know, I've had inmates try to hit me with chairs. I've had inmates, more than one inmate, try to stab me with a knife. And I've had inmates challenge me to a fight because they didn't like the fact that I was enforcing the prison rules. And I've used these concepts and I've used these strategies, and they worked. I've used these concepts and these strategies at different martial arts schools that I've went to, and you know they work there as well. So, anyways, that's my video. This video is about 30 minutes long. I guess that's long enough for me running my mouth. If you have any other questions or any other things that you think I should make a video about, then you know just let me know in the comments. Like I said, if you have any other suggestions, let me know in the comments. Thank you. Love, peace, and elbow grease, and have a good night.